Well, Jill Rutter is a Senior Fellow at the UK in a Changing Europe and at the Institute for Government. Morning to you, Jill. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Laura.
This is, of course, Sir Keir Starmer's first meeting with Ursula von der Leyen as Prime Minister. What do we think he wants to get out of this meeting?
I think he wants to sort of kick things off. I mean, he wants to build on the positive mood music. He's met Ursula von der Leyen, but not had a sort of formal bilateral in this sense in Brussels before. So he'll want to go on, I think, maybe set out some of the UK's aims for resetting the relationship, test the ground as to where the EU is, and possibly sort of kick off further work on areas for widening and deepening cooperation. He said that he wanted to resolve some of the problems in Boris Johnson's botched EU deal. We know that he's very keen on further defence and security cooperation. So those are the sort of issues we'd expect him to be talking about, as well as the sort of wider things, what's going on with Ukraine, what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, which he'll also pick up with President von der Leyen.
Yeah, given that defence and security are so high on the international agenda at the moment, will there be much scope then to look at reopening parts of the Brexit deals in terms of freedom of movement or, the single market and customs union?
Well, he's absolutely ruled out and said there are red lines that the UK won't rejoin the single market or the customs union. He's said he has no plans on a mobility deal, but we do know that one of the things that's really at the top of the EU's list for improving the relationship with the UK is something on youth mobility. The UK has deals on youth mobility with Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, even Iceland. So the EU might be saying, if you can do deals on youth mobility with those countries, why can't you give us something similar? I think they want something that's a bit more generous than those deals, but we'll see. That's potentially up for negotiation. I think they'll regard that as a bit of a sort of token of goodwill, whether Keir Starmer is prepared to talk about that. I think both sides see benefits in talking more on defence and security. That's something the EU was always very keen about, but one of the big problematic areas there and where I think there are divisions within the EU is how far does that go? Does it go to talking cooperation that's been happening informally since the invasion of Ukraine anyway? Or does it sort of extend to allowing UK-based firms access to EU defence contracts? That's, I think, likely to be a bit more of a sticking point. We know Keir Starmer wants to do other things. He'd like to have mutual recognition and professional qualifications. The UK asked for that last time round. David Frost asked for that and didn't get it. He wants to do a deal to make it easier for food exporters to move their goods into the EU through having a veterinary deal, if we can get that. Be interesting to see whether the EU bites on that. The EU is interested in guarantees on fishing, so interested to see if Keir Starmer bites on that one.
It's interesting because it sounds like a huge sort of shopping list that the Prime Minister has, but if he's not prepared to move on allowing young people freedom of movement between the UK and Europe, and he's not interested in joining the single market or a customs union, is there much wriggle room?
Well, we'll see. I don't think the EU is asking for anything we'd recognise as freedom of movement. Freedom of movement meant that you came, you had lots of rights over here, you could stay for an unlimited amount of time. What they're talking now about, I think, is something quite different, a more limited scope, time limited. They started off asking for a sort of 4-year visa. I think they're reducing their expectations now to sort of 2 years to come over to work or study. And that actually might alleviate some of the job pressures we see in some of the areas where there are shortages now. So it's not entirely against the UK's interests either. But Keir Starmer is obviously very nervous about anything that could be characterised as free movement, because that was one of the big sort of post-Brexit promises that free movement would end.